and welcome to Uncut. My name is Rob, and welcome to part 2 of our huge, stonking review of the year. In the first part, link in the top right now, we talked about sort of January to June. In a break from the top 10, we just talked about all the movies that were highlights in those months that sort of spoke to us in any way. In this second half or quarter, or however you want to mathematically break it down, and we look at highlighted movies from the past 12 months that played at festivals that haven't quite had the UK cinema release date yet, and also the really fun bit, the worst of the year, which I didn't have a pick for that, so I will just say, because I don't have a pick on that section, that was on Graham's half of the recording, and just say for me it was indie. I don't like picking on indie, but for this case kinda relevant to do that, but an American indie, very anti-abortion, in which a young couple, anti-abortion in the subtext, it's plain as the nose in your face, but anti-abortion subtext of this movie called The Fee Away, in which a young couple basically trapped in this motorway in the desert, effectively. They're trapped in limbo, and they just keep on going round and round and round, and they're chased by this guy in a black car. Sounds cool. When you think about what it's talking about, it really, really, really isn't, and it's just not as fun as it sounds. But let's pass over to the previous recording and get to business, shall we? Changing it up a little bit at mid-year here. So, like we alluded to earlier with Pearl being the hangover from 2022, there's a lot of movies, I assume, from the two of you, because you see a lot of festival stuff, that you would have liked to put on your list, but maybe isn't out yet, and also just stuff which people should look out for. Just a few.
Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating. Literally, if you were to look at my top 5 of the year, it's all films that aren't out yet. So, The Holdovers, which is out very soon. It's baffling because it's a Christmas movie, and they've held it in the UK until January. It's Paul Giamatti as a teacher at a very posh boarding school in the 70s, who basically gets stuck with the holdovers, the kids whose parents don't want them to go home for Christmas. And you have Dominic Sessa as one of these kids, and the dinner lady is played by Divine, I think her name is. She's up for, she pretty much has the best supporting actress on LOP. And it's all about class and race and who gets to be privileged and who gets to tell stories. It's also incredibly funny.
Is that the Alexander Payne?
The Alexander Payne. Yeah, it's very, 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 very funny. I think people are being a bit dismissive of how much of a threat Giamatti is in the Oscar race. He is phenomenal. That's out in January. Then we have another one that's out in January, which we will tell you now will emotionally destroy you, called All of Us Strangers.
Okay.
This is, it's quite hard to talk about because it's I don't really know how you describe it, a metaphysical ghost story. It's basically Andrew Scott, who is again a struggling writer living in a multi-million pound apartment, as far as I can see, who connects with Paul Mescal, who lives in his building as well, and then reconnects with his dead parents, played by Claire Foy and Jamie Bell. Yeah. All you need to know is that I'm not someone who cries very much at films or reacts that much at all. And I came out of this and was sobbing so inconsolably down the escalator on the Picture House Central that people coming up were like, what the hell is going on? What have they just seen? Because I saw it at a press screening at London Film Festival. Everyone was like, what's going on? Is there something wrong? Do we need to leave the building? Couldn't breathe. I started 15-minute crying, 15 minutes in. Couldn't stop. I know that Kat's seen it recently as well.
Yeah, prepare to have the Pet Shop Boys, You're Always on My mind, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Power of Love. Just ruined forever. Like...
Oh, the power of love would just utterly...
Like Pavlov's dog now, you know. Tears. You hear that and just tears.
I mean, Andrew Scott has been my favourite theatrical actor for years. He is extraordinary on stage. I mean, utterly extraordinary. He did a one-man play of Vanya this year, which should have been utterly ridiculous considering he was playing the female characters as well. But he was incredible. But he's never really had, I think, a film or TV role. And he's going to be everywhere because he's going to be in the Netflix version of Ripley as well, which was filmed some time ago but is out soon. So that is fantastic. Poor Things. Emma Stone as Frankenstein. Mark Ruffalo as a hilariously libidinous con man who cannot cope at all with her sexuality. Willem Dafoe is like a mad scientist. You will see more of Emma Stone than you could ever have conceived, possibly more than even her gynecologist gets to see.
Yeah, it has been at the.
But it's great.
Been at the heart of a lot of the Puritine movement. That movie,
Oh yeah, they're gonna love
Pure,
this.
Pure Things.
But they're gonna love. I liked though that. I mean, she is phenomenally brave. You would not. What I found the bravest is that normally when you get an A-list actress like that who is prepared to strip off, there are rules. It has to be an actor of equal stature to her. They have to show equal. These contracts will like determine how much each one shows, etc. Here, she is fully nude and performing, incredibly explicit sex acts with bit part actors. They are not anybody. They are not names. They're no one. I mean that with the greatest of respect to them. And that's not something that anybody else would do, I don't think. It's always, if you, like I rewatched Out of Sight last night, which is surprisingly chaste for how sexy it is. But, there are obviously rules about how much you can show of J-Lo, how much you can show of George Clooney. She's just out there with some bit part actor that yeah, it's extraordinary. It's a wonderful film. It's very, very funny. It's all Candyfloss looking. I really like the fact that it is solidly feminist at its core. It's fantastic. I think people will love it.
Looking forward to that, yeah.
I think the final one for me is kind of a total tonal change. Is the zone Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, which is 90 minutes of sheer unadulterated hell with Sandra Hüller as a family growing up in the literally right next door to Auschwitz. It has a soundtrack that may as well have been soundtracked by Hieronymus Bosch. It is halfway through. I was like, is that gunfire? Yep, no, it's just gunfire, screams. Because the whole point is that to that family, that was white noise. It is a 90 minutes of screaming, furious rage that it feels very much needed right now.
It's literally on my watch pile, and now I'm terrified.
It's only 90 minutes. It's only 90 minutes, but like she has an entire speech about how we have everything we want, and this is where we want to be, and this is where our family is. And at the end of every single line she says, you can say, yes, right next to Auschwitz. It's just scene after scene of horrifying images. At one point, her children are playing with teeth. Her girlfriends are squabbling over a bag of clothes stolen from Jewish women that enter the camps. It's horrifying.
Well, he's
and brilliant.
It's Jonathan Glazer's new one, isn't it? So he's really filling a niche, I guess.
And also, I'm kind of fascinated by, probably far too lengthy for this podcast, but the rules of how international films apply, because apparently we are in for the best chance of the best international film Oscar because The Zone of Interest is from Britain, which I find is bizarre.
Weird.
But it is Britain's entry. It's on the shortlist, very, very likely to be nominated. But yes, we are in with the best shot of winning this from Britain, which I just find a bit odd.
Lawless.
But it is wonderful and horrifying, and you will not look at Sandra Hüller again. You may have all been over Anatomy of a Fall. Wait till you've seen her in this.
Kat, any picks from you to look forward to in 24?
So for me, I mean, I've seen over like 150 films at festivals. Festivals are sort of my bread and butter when it comes to reviewing. So one that's coming out in January is Jackdaw by Jamie Childs. It's his feature debut, but he's worked on like all the big TV shows, Who, Sandman, I think he did one of the Lord of the Rings episodes. It stars Oliver Jackson Cohen from Invisible Man and Hill House. as an ex-motocross racer, an army veteran who returns to his northern town and gets caught up with the criminal underbelly when his brother goes missing. It was filmed in Hartlepool, and the cinematography is incredible. It reminds me of, I mean, I grew up in Nottingham, but it reminds me of where I grew up in that it's pylons, like industrial estates, and then suddenly like random countryside, and it's all filmed at sort of like dusk and dawn, and it's almost like a British John Wick, but it's probably more akin to something like Bull, I guess, would be sort of like a British thing. Had a lot of fun with that. One that's screened at Fright Fest, which is getting released in the US in January, so I guess the UK will hopefully be not too long after. It's screened as Farang there, but it's now been renamed Mayhem. It's the new one by Xavier Gen. It is very much not his French extremity, but it is following his action that he's done with Gangs of London, the TV show. He's got Jude Poyer, the stunt coordinator from that, doing the action, and it's a revenge thriller, but it spends a good hour or so building up the characters, so you really feel for the lead and his family that he has created. And so when things go wrong, you really feel the impact of that. And the action is just insane. There's a sequence in a lift where people,
I was about to say that's the lift one, isn't it? Yeah.
It gets a machete through his arm, and whilst it's still in his arm, he's using it to stab people, and it's just completely bonkers. It's completely bonkers handy. Gore, and has a real emotional kick. And I rewatched it recently with my husband, and it's probably not the best for fathers and daughters because it really tugs on those heartstrings. So he was a bit of a mess after that. Another one from Fright Fest is The Moor, which screened as The First Blood Strand. It's directed by Chris Cronin, no relation to Lee. It is set around the Yorkshire Moors. It's kind of true crime mixed with a bit of found footage, lots of grief. So there's a girl who, when she was a child, her best friend got taken by some sort of child abductor, serial killer. His remains were never found. 25 years later, his father asks for her help, and so they go back to the moors and they're looking for the body with the aid of mediums. So then, like, the horror elements start to work in. It made sheep terrifying. It looks beautiful.
Yes.
I
really want to catch this one.
I know that he's shopping it to distributors at the moment. He may or may not be changing the ending. So those.
And that will be
those that have
the ending.
Well, it's the bit just before the ending. For those that have seen it, it's the bit just before. I haven't seen it. There's something like there's a lot of stuff on the moors, and then it's not on the moors, and then the ending happens, and it's kind of that little bit in the middle. They're trying to work out whether it works better with or without it, because it is about 2 hours, so it is a little bit long for some people. Another rec is Strange Darling, which is screened at Fantastic Fest. It stars, I'm not a stalker, it stars Carl Gellner and Willa Fitzgerald. It's directed by J.T. Mullner, and it's a non-linear man and woman cat and mouse serial killer film, which doesn't go where you expect it to. I had a lot of fun with it. Willa Fitzgerald is amazing in House of Usher, and this is just solidifies her for me. And my final pick is one that I know that Naomi also enjoyed, and that is What You Wish For. Stars Nick Stahl. Can't really say much about it other than it's a chef who gets in over his head when he goes to visit his friend. He kind of thinks his friend's got the perfect life, and then steps into his shoes and realizes quite quickly that, careful what you wish for. As the title suggests, it's the grass is not greener, and it's a really fun, like, dark comedy of just this guy getting in.
Solid
definitely. There's a business model in there that we may or may not have discussed
business plan.
For legal reasons.
We have discussed. I think it's a very clear, solid business plan, and to be frank, I've put it down as my retirement plan. It's a real shame because it seems to have played kind of off-strand at a lot of festivals.
I mean,
And
it
it's
won. It won
great.
Celluloid
It's
Scream's
really,
Audience
really
Award.
good.
It was the winner. So when you get it in
Yeah.
front of the right crowd, it really plays.
It's a very welcome return for
He's
Nick
so
Stahl
good at
as
it.
well, who had such a promising career that was kind of very derailed. And he's fantastic in this. What I love is just the matter of fact pragmatism throughout. It's just like, well, guess this is what I do now. All the way through, it is an absolute surefire crowd pleaser. So I very much hope. I looked and I couldn't see that it had distribution in the UK, so I very much hope that somebody picks it up.
Fingers crossed. Some cool sounding stuff there. Very much so.
Well, before we go away for just under a week, before we hand over to Pop Screen for the second half of our review of the year, there's just time for the baleful duty of nominating our least favourite films of the year. And I'm going to start off with the person who actually pumped the air with his fists when we said we'd be doing this, which is Simon.
Right, yes. Well, I actually have probably two. Well, okay. So, how many are we allowed with this?
Let's say a couple. Let's max it out as a couple.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I will take a couple then, because my second least favorite film of the year was actually a film that I did finish. The Retirement Plan with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yes.
Very unfortunate. I think it might be my least favorite Nicolas Cage film. Basically, his Jerry Action film. His granddaughter is shipped off to go see him in the. Is it in the Bahamas or the Seychelles? It's somewhere really nice. Yeah, it's basically low budget, just completely joyless action, quote unquote, comedy without any laughs in it whatsoever. So yeah, okay, I did see that one from beginning to end. The actual worst film that I, again, quote unquote, saw this year was Paw Patrol, the mighty movie. Now, this was
This is the second one.
Yes, I believe so. I mean, come on, like I really know, please. So this was me getting on the hype of Barbenheimer, and there was a lot of stuff about Saw Patrol. So Saw 10 and Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie came out on the same day. Classic counter programming. So I had quite a moderately good time watching Saw 10. Nice 4DX screening, getting splattered with water, whenever there was some brain surgery going on. That was fun. And we had a couple of cans during the film. It was quite good. And I thought, you know what, I've got an Odeon Limitless card, you see. I'm gonna go on the way home to watch the last screening of Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. And I think ear splitting doesn't really do it justice. Truly a horrendous experience. And I think as well, we have this strange UK dub where all of the the talented voice artists in the US, you've got McKenna Grace, you've got Chris Rock, quite a few notable names in there, Kristen Bell as well. All replaced by these strange Tory-sounding children, and they also replaced Lil Rel Howery's character with, I'm not even joking, Trevor McDonald. So if you look up on Instagram, Trevor McDonald has done promotional material for Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. And it is one of the saddest and strangest things I've seen this year. I lasted 30 minutes into this before I was like, I can't do it. I cannot do it. It is to this day the only film that I've walked out of in sheer kind of terror rather than apathy. So it's been an interesting year. I have seen some crap this year, I will say that, and that is entirely down to personal choice. So yeah, it hasn't been the greatest year in the world, but Paw Patrol is definitely at the bottom.
Vincent, have you got anything that can top that?
Well, it's actually, I'm going to follow on from that because Simon gave us the patrol part of Saw Patrol, and I'm going to say my worst film of this year is Saw X.
Oh no!
Yes. Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Now,
how about this?
This may have been partly influenced by the fact that in the run up to that, this was part of me watching the entire Saw franchise. James and I have discussed this on our podcast. So, yeah. And to watch all of the whole Saw franchise in the space of a month is not a particularly enjoyable experience. It's like, it's kind of
Speak for yourself, okay.
But of the lot, I think that Saw X is one of the worst because it was, for me, and if other people like it, good for them. That's fine. All opinions are available. But I found Saw X to be interminably protracted. It was bizarrely neutered which is a strange thing to say about a Saw movie. And I thought, this feels a bit tame. The reveals were obvious. The monologuing was tedious. There was a complete lack of suspense. There was a lack of stakes. I felt there was no drama. And I think it would have been better named Your Un. That was my worst film of the year. And although I will admit, it's kind of a close thing because something I saw more recently that I had high hopes for. Saw X I went into with low expectations, but I went into Napoleon with quite high expectations. And that I found to be very frustratingly unfocused. That it never struck a balance between narrative or interpersonal relations, political intrigue, and military conflict. Napoleon is a movie that looked nice, but went and I'm like, yeah, can we have some detail, please? Ironically, perhaps I would have liked. I have heard an assessment of Napoleon that it may have been that the 4-hour cut may be preferable because it allow more delving into what's going on. In the case of Saw X, I'd be happy to have a 90-minute cut because why the fuck was that thing 2 hours long? Yeah, so Napoleon was bad. Saw X was worse.
James, what ruined your afternoons this year?
I talked about one of my favourite films of the year, Nimona, as it's an excellent example of what Netflix original films should aspire to be. One of the worst films I saw this year was what you expect from a Netflix original film. It was called The Outlaws.
Right. I don't know.
And this is a film with Pierce Brosnan, Ellen Barkin, Nina Dobrev, and Adam Devine. It's about a bank manager who believes that his fiance's parents were responsible for robbing his bank. And it's a heist comedy, which is a failure as both a heist film and a comedy film. When your biggest set piece involves Adam Devine going into a bank dressed as Shrek, then you've got to be thinking, shall I go to a funeral to get more laughs?
I kind of want to see that now.
Yeah, so I didn't like that. I know. It's not worth it. I'm sorry. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up here. That's what I would say is my worst film of the year was a film I watched for Nerdly to review. It was, I don't think any of you would have seen it. It's called Strain 100. I don't like to diss low budget films because they do feel like people are putting all their resources into trying to make something in spite of not having a blockbuster style budget. But if this was just a dull zombie film, then it wouldn't make my list. It's the fact that it's an 84-minute film, which somehow, despite being delayed because of the pandemic, it feels reactionary to it by having bits in it which feel like it was geared towards anti-vaxxers, particularly the gun-toting ones. There's, a whole thing about how the end of the world was caused by a vaccine, but then there's also a really weird bit where the film just stops to have YouTubers who are essentially gun fetishists come on to kind of shoot zombies. There's literal scene where, I'm going to get the name wrong, but this is just an example. Someone just comes on with a gun going, "Hi, my name is Shadycock84. Perhaps you've heard of me."
Best supporting actor, Shadycock84.
It's fire. I try to find the best in films. So I found the best thing about this film. It ended.
I kind of want to see this to check my supposition that James's review is more entertaining than the movie itself.
Oliver, what have you particularly disliked this year?
Well, to be honest with you, there's loads of films I've watched that I had to review that I haven't liked. None of them are particularly worth mentioning. There's only one film I've really watched this year that I thought I wanted to like, really didn't like. So, which I guess is arguably more interesting than a film that I just watched and just thought nothing of. And this is probably a hot take because I think it's fairly. I think I also went away for a few minutes, so it might have already been talked about.
Okay.
In someone's favorite film, but I really did not care for Infinity Pool by Brandon Cronenberg. I was a reasonably good fan of the last one. I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, this one just couldn't get on board with it at all. I thought the concept was interesting, but I thought my Letterboxd review comparison I did was when I first watched Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. It's like 4 years ago when I first watched it. I was annoyed that the weird, cool mask, crazy thing was like so short and wasn't the entire film. I was like, oh, we need more of this weird stuff. And then I rewatched that film and realized how good it is that you only see like a small amount of it because it makes it so much more impactful. Getting this like brief glimpse into the sort of depravity. Whereas this film is the film that I wanted 4 years ago, where it's like constant, like every 5 minutes, it's just like weird, crazy rich people with masks on, like doing something horrible. And I'm very fed up and kind of bored of films about how rich people are like freaky and weird and evil. I just think it's a very played out concept at this point. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of not interesting. It has a concept that is very interesting, but doesn't really do anything with it that I think was particularly very interesting. Also very boring exploration of like masculinity. Like the main character is like constantly like berated, and I don't know if there's obviously some sort of commentary on him as a crap writer and a sort of kind of a loser. But I just thought it was very boring, basic stuff, and also thought it looked kind of ugly. Like Brandon Cronenberg has these like horrible close-ups that are just like I don't know. They're very hard. It's like hard to explain why I didn't like them so much, but they're just so they're just like it just randomly appears on someone's eyes for like no reason. It just really got to me. But I didn't absolutely hate it. I wouldn't say it was like if I said it was the worst film I saw all year, which it probably was. It sounds like I thought it was like despicable. I just haven't seen that many films I didn't like this year.
You've had a great year. I enjoyed Infinity Pool for what it's worth.
No, I mean, as I said, I can see why people would like it. It wasn't really for me, but to be honest with you, most of the films I've watched this year have been in the last 2 weeks, and mostly just watched ones that I knew I was going to like. So, I didn't like this one too much. I also didn't really like the sort of dreamy, surrealist things. I'd rather a film be really wacky and out there, or just like normal rather than sort of weird hybrid of both. But yeah, as I said, I will say that I really liked the sound design and the soundtrack was really good. And I thought the set and prop design was also really interesting. I just wasn't too big on the sort of the way the content, the way that the themes and the story was explored particularly very much.
Yeah, I've kept quiet about my least favourite because it is on someone's list, and I also think it would be a fun guessing game for listeners to try and work out which one it is. But yes,
has it been mentioned so far?
It has.
Ooh.
It's not one of yours. I'll give you that. But yes, Mike, have you got anything to throw in the bin?
Yeah, like Ollie, I've been looking. I struggled to actually think of like films I really didn't like, and then I remembered I did almost out of obligation go see The Exorcist Believer, even though I knew it was probably not going to be great. And to be fair, I think if it didn't have The Exorcist on it, it would be largely forgotten. Because it's an Exorcist film, it got a lot more attention than it probably deserved. Poor Ellen Burstyn. What did she do to deserve the way her character is treated in this film? It's just a bit crap. It's like just having too many characters that it doesn't know how to deal with, and so does them all really badly. There's some interesting plot things buried in there, but they don't explore them properly. And the exorcism itself is bad in that it's just not very dramatic. It feels
it's just very unsatisfying, and I don't understand how there's going to be 2 more because it feels like what are they going to do next?
Already?
You just feel like that. It's really strange. Yeah. It's just a bit crap and long, and just nothing really to it. And then one I was a bit disappointed with. It feels harsh to say it's my worst film of the year, but I didn't come out with great feelings about it. It was The Eternal Daughter, Joanna Hogg, which I was sort of excited for because I thought, it'd be a ghost story. So Tilda Swinton playing double parts, and it's just I sort of got what it was going for quite early on, and it was like, is that it? It's just a bit. It felt very sort of superficial and empty, which is also because Tilda Swinton does a very good job in it. So it's not like a horrible thing to watch. It's just very sort of like, it's just another horror grief movie, and it doesn't really put any interesting spin on it particularly. And it's sort of like it feels like it's building up to something, and then it's just like, that's it, and it's So it's just too very enough. Yeah, which is a shame. It's a beautiful location, and it's, as I said, the performers are good, but it's just very much like,
I think it would have been better actually if it wasn't a ghost story. If it just sort of sat on its own as a drama about storytelling and memory. I think it would be perfectly coherent, but sort of bolting on this horror element to it just doesn't hold water for me.
Yeah, shame. That's more disappointing. Whereas Exorcist Believer at least knew going in that it's probably not be great, and it was better than I thought it could be, but it was still crap. So.
Well, we'll be back on your feed with July to December, going through Barbenheimer and more on Thursday the 11th of January. Do remember that will be on the Pop Screen feed, not Directors Uncut. But that's been your lot from me, Mike, Oliver, Simon, James and Vincent, and we'll see you for part 2.
I want to know what your least favourite film of the year was.
Yeah, we need to know now.
I fucking hate Tar. I hate...
really?
The first film.
Get out.